During this time period, the nation faced three major problems: the social problem, the political problem, and the constitutional problem. The social problem entails what are they going to do with the newly freed slaves? How will they earn a living, and will they be provided with education? The political problem entails how will the nation be reconstructed after the damage of the war? How will the South be reintegrated, and will the South be punished for their actions? The constitutional problem entails who will have the authority to reconstruct the nation? The Congress? The President? How did the Civil War affect this question of authority of government?
Black codes were a series of laws which restricted former slaves. These laws enabled segregation and racism. The laws restricted rights and freedoms and created unequal treatment for slaves. These laws were used upon freedmen. Violence was also used when laws were not followed. Towns began to set up an authority and influence and created systematic segregation.
Slaves were given the chance to climb the economic ladder by working farming jobs. Slaveholders often took advantage of these slaves by making them pay debt off their income. The chance to become a tenant farmer was often slim. Tenant farmers were supposed to be able to farm someone else's land for crop, returning some of the crop for rent. However, sharecroppers did not have control over which crops they planted. They also could not decide how these crops were sold.
The Freedmen's Bureau was a federal organization to help former slaves and poor whites. The organization was made in 1865 by Abraham Lincoln. A bill which would have extended the life of the organization was vetoed by Johnson. The Bureau gave relief work, regulated black labor, gave administration of justice, managed abandoned and confiscated property, and supported further education. This became a proper political machine for Republicans.
Following the American Civil War, in which the country encountered the issue of reintegrating the South into the Union post-secession and defining the status of citizenship and quality life for freed African Americans, Lincoln established his Reconstruction plan. This plan followed a path of forgiveness and reconstruction without harsh reprimands. He offered a full pardon for those who would take a loyalty oath. Once 10% of legal voters accepted the oath, a state government could be established. This became known as the 10% Plan, which was considered awfully generous. He wanted to reintegrate Southern states as quickly as possible, as his intention was to recreate unity.
Radical Republicans believed in a much stricter punishment for the South after the Civil War. Congress, with a majority of Republicans, believed that Johnson would be sided with them in making legislation, but over time this became less evident. The Reconstruction Act of 1867 divided Southern states into 5 districts, created tribunal courts, forced new state constitutions giving black suffrage, and forced adoption of the 14th to join the Union. Congress at any point could override a veto by Johnson.
Radical Republicans wanted to give rights to African American men, like voting, property ownership, and education. While they wanted to grant African Americans rights, they needed to strip white Confederates of their rights. They also wanted the South to pay for their disloyal actions during the Civil War. Senator Benjamin F. Wade and Representative Henry Davis were sponsored in a bill to represent the Lincoln Plan. The bill called for congressional control of Reconstruction, an end to slavery and Confederate states under military rule. They also called for the ironclad oath, 50% allegiance and exclusion of Confederate officials from government. This became known as the Wade-Davis Bill.
Johnson at first took the Congress approach for Reconstruction, but slowly he became more lenient. Radical Republicans became worried that Johnson had changed plans or misled them. In 1865, with Congress out of session, Johnson constructed his own Reconstruction plan. Each state would have to give up its right to secession, each state would pledge allegiance to the Union, war that would be canceled, and each state would need to approve the 13th Amendment. Johnson supported states' rights and did not force oath upon high-ranking Confederates.
The 13th Amendment would abolish slavery. Johnson's Reconstruction Plan would ratify the 13th Amendment by making it a requirement for Southern readmission. In return, the South would not have to pay off any war debt or damages if it was ratified. In 1865, the amendment was finally passed in the House, legally outlawing slavery. Although it was approved on paper, the public reform would take way longer. Discrimination existed and segregation occurred, not making things entirely equal.
The 14th Amendment gave all citizens equal protection under state laws and due process of the laws. Most Southern states refused to accept the 14th Amendment. Due to the discontent with the 14th Amendment, a lot of violence occurred. As a result, the government needed to respond. The 14th Amendment for freedmen was a glimmer of hope and was highly wanted. It helped enforce the rights guaranteed to former slaves and gave confidence to them.